Now, Africa aims to strengthen the role of women through ensuring gender equality and parity in all spheres of life, as set out in the Agenda 2063 for the African Union and the SDGs. However, there's a little monitoring of progress for women and girls. To discuss ways to improve gender statistics in Africa, we got a chance to speak to our Fatmata Sesay, advisor on women economic empowerment at UN Women. Take a look.
There are a lot of gaps in terms of the data that is required to monitor and report on the SDGs. And those gaps are already some of the status of what we find on gender statistics on the continent. But also another status that is very important to note when we talk about gender statistics is the enabling framework, the legal environment. Within the statistical acts in many countries in Africa, are there any provisions at all for gender statistics? Within national statistical strategies, do we have any provision for gender statistics? So when we look at the enabling environment, we do see that some countries do have challenges. There are capacity challenges. But then one of the most important one I want to draw attention to is the challenge with regards to budget allocation to statistics in general and to gender statistics in particular. Most national statistical offices will tell you the allocation for statistics will be much limited given the amount of work that is required to be done. So it points us to the importance of recognizing what the role gender statistics will play, not only for monitoring and reporting, but using such statistics for planning purposes. So the use of statistics for the implementation of interventions, which is statistics informing the choice of interventions you will make, is still very critical. And that importance can only be seen on the allocations that are actually allocated by governments for the collection of statistics and gender statistics.
All right, so you've pointed out that there is little allocation of budget to this particular area. Do you have any statistics supporting that?
That's an interesting one, because I do not want to point out in any particular country. It's going to be difficult for me to tell you what are the allocations specifically per country. But then looking across Africa, it's not new at all to see that most national statistical offices will tell you our allocations for statistics as a whole is already have a gap in its own to even talk about what we can do on gender statistics. But again, let's not only look at the allocation, because often even the technical capacity, the tools that are required, it is not every national statistical office that even have a gender statistics unit or even officials for gender statistics. So what motivation is there to even produce this data if you do not have capacity and the able people who will actually be able to do this work? So without even looking at the resources that are required, and I'm saying we shouldn't only look at the financial resources, the budget itself, but we have institutional capacity and then the human capacity and the tools and the techniques that are required. A lot more needs to be done in that area for many countries in Africa.
All right, so one of the things that were suggested today is the use of citizen-generated data. How important is this to you?
I will even take the use of alternative data or non-official data beyond data that is being collected from national statistical offices. Now that is extremely important, because from all the discussions you've had in the 2 days in our gender statistics workshop, what you hear people talk about very often, there are gaps for gender statistics. There are gaps for statistics as a whole. And also the national statistical offices may not be able to fill this gap all on their own within the time for which the data is required. So if we do not begin to source out and look out for other institutions that are already producing this data anyway, whether we use the data or not, the data is already being produced. The effort we need to make is to then make sure that data meets the quality of the national statistical offices and the way they want to use it. Those other institutions and players, especially civil society organizations, know the requirement for a reliable data and accurate data, and then make use of it to actually close the gender gap. So alternative sources of data or unofficial or non-official sources of data are extremely important for our work with regards to reporting or closing the gender statistics gap.
So, most of the issues in this particular area have to do with the lack of financial capacity, but what do you think about skills in just the data collection, especially when it comes to gender statistics?
I mean, I like that question very much, because as I mentioned earlier on, when we talk about resources for collecting gender statistics, we shouldn't only look at financial. I almost can guarantee you have some national statistical offices that they can give millions of dollars right now. They may not be able to collect that data, because readiness to collect it is not only about financial resources. It's so much about having the tools, the methodologies, doing the trainings, and then the able person who even understand it. Gender is not one thing in which you just go to school and understand how to collect the data. The process of collecting the data, who collects the data, how, when is the data collected? All of those are issues that need to be considered. So capacity to even understand how gender statistics is collected, to understand why do we need to collect gender statistics. All of that is so important, and the institutional structures that can enable that to happen is also very important. So we shouldn't only focus on the resources, but we should look at the interconnectedness of all the resources that are required: physical, tools, instruments, methodologies, and as well as the financial to make this happen.